pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll with Atlantis.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Echo Delta nominal.
Sliding down, SCE off. Putting in SCE off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you may be tuning in from today. Welcome to this week's episode of NASA Spaceflight Live. This is an episode, we haven't done this format in a little bit, but we've got some live views from Boca Chica, Texas, Starbase, Texas. We've got the robotic cameras out there. We've also got the truck cam deployed out there by Mary, as usual. So the NSF team bringing you some live views of Boca, and we're going to be talking all things Starship today. We'd like to do a whole lot of Q&A about Starship, and obviously it's a program with a lot of interest, so we're dedicating this week's episode to talking all about those shiny rockets down in Texas. Let me know if you can hear me. Chat saying 5x5 and everything is what we want to see, so thank you for that. It's not just me. My name is Thomas Burghardt. You may have heard me on some streams before, but I'm joined by a couple of my good friends here at NSF. First off, Alex, what is up with you today? Thank you for joining NSF Live this week.
Well, it's a little bit hot over here, but, enduring all the weather. And, I'm really excited about all the stuff that we could talk about today, all the Starship stuff coming up soon, right around the corner, literally.
Sounds good. We've also got Jack Beyer on comms with us today. Jack, how you doing this afternoon? Oh no, Jack's muted right now. He's probably talking, and he's probably saying some really cool stuff. There he is.
Talking while muted. I'm a pro at this. You can tell I've been doing this for a while now that I talk while muted still. I'm doing good. I'm excited about talking about Starship. The Tim interview with Elon, the first part of, 4, was a fascinating watch. And yeah, a lot to unpack. So
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about what Tim, Everyday Astronaut, I'm sure a lot of viewers of our channel have already seen that video. We'll be talking about some of the things that Elon talked about in that video. We'll also talk about just some of the happenings in the last week and what's coming up next for Starbase and the Starship program. Of course, we're going to be taking a whole lot of questions. Jack is going to have the question panel up for us. So if you've got questions, go ahead and tag us with @NASASpaceflight, and we're going to be answering those throughout the broadcast. And yeah, we'll be here for sort of an NSF Live episode all about Starship. Well, I guess we should start, while the questions start to come in, just with a quick recap of what happened over the past week. The vehicles that we're paying the closest attention to right now have got to be the two boosters that are up and coming. Booster 7, Booster 8 are, the boosters of focus. Booster 7 is now back at the production site after what appears to have been a successful cryogenic proof test. So hopefully some Raptor engine install coming up next for that vehicle. And then Booster 8 kind of alongside in the area, also waiting for its turn for testing and determining which of those boosters may eventually support an orbital flight test. And then of course on the ship side, Ship 24 has been fully stacked. And so that's going to be the ship of focus, and that ship undergoing cryoproofing testing and static fire testing, hopefully in the not too distant future. We're looking at the production site right now. Again, these are live views from Boca Chica. You can see Booster 7 in the Megabay, which is still not completely complete, I think, but it's complete enough that they can use it. There's a nice close-up view of the top of Booster 7 there, and then Ship 24 in the other high bay. And yeah, so those are the vehicles we're keeping a close eye on, and that testing milestone, the Booster 7 cryoproof, was kind of the big thing completed this past week, paving the way for Raptor engine install. So Alex, what are you going to be looking for in the next week or so as far as where SpaceX is going to be going next?
Oh, man. I think probably seeing like a conga line of Raptors going into the Megabay. That's probably
That has been
be
the other thing over this past week. I feels like every daily video, it's like, oh, by the way, more Raptor 2 engines were delivered,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, totally. The only problem is obviously we're not seeing them being installed yet on Booster 7, but we know they are coming. They have to be coming soon. And oh geez, that's going to be so amazing because it's going to be after Booster 4. It's going to be the next booster to get engines. And we saw Booster 4, they installed all 29 engines in like a night. And that's gonna be just like a little bit going back again to that excitement, that build up, with a new booster, getting new engines and everything, and knowing that at least maybe this time they are able to static fire them and do some tests with them. So that's going to be very exciting to look for.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
one thing I'm really looking forward to in terms of Raptor install is I'd love to get our eyes on the hardware that is used to do that, because the speed with which they were able to install all of the Raptors on Booster 4, it was like one night is how long it took. It was insanely fast. And that makes me wonder, is there like some kind of speed loader, like like some kind of Raptor installed jig or a fixture or something that enables them to do it really fast? Because previously, when say Starships were on suborbital pad A or B, we've seen them sort of working underneath the Starships for long periods of time just to install or remove an engine. So the fact that they're able to install them so rapidly on Booster 4 and hopefully also Booster 7, I'm wondering if there's like some hardware that enables that, and I'm hoping that we can perhaps get some eyes on that hardware.
I know it's a
I
lot
just want
easier
to know
to
how they
see
do
that
it.
if they do engine work out at the launch site, because obviously that's way more open than back in the production site in one of the high bays or the Megabay or whatever. But definitely keeping an eye on that. And of course, the idea is they don't have to do engine work out at the launch site. Ideally, you can install them all on the production site and then not have to worry about it. But I agree that would be really cool to get an eye on how that process works.
Indeed.
Especially with
And
Raptor 2 now, because it's the first time that we actually see a vehicle getting Raptor 2s. And, we've seen especially the close-ups that we got on the latest Starship presentation of the Raptor engines. It just looks so different, even the way that the mounts work. Like, even for the ships, for example, that's also probably going to be something that we're going to be looking out for in the next few weeks. Is also the Raptor vacuum engines have also different mount installations and things like that on the ship. So it's a whole new thing right now for them, and it's obviously way simplified. It's not really like the previous ones we've seen, for example, with Booster 5, and this one Booster 7, when they have rolled out in front of our cameras. We've seen like all the guts coming down from the engine section and all the pipes and everything. And some of that stuff of hooking up the Raptors have been simplified a little bit, moving some of that hardware to the booster itself, that it's easier to install the engines. But still, I'm kind of curious how that's going to look like. Yeah, we're seeing some pictures by Mary of how simplified the Raptors are. Like, you don't see anywhere there. Like, where do you hook that up into the booster? Like on the previous ones, you could even see the gimbal mount. Like, yeah, all of that has been moved to the booster itself, and the TVC and everything. Like, they have simplified that in that sense, probably because they're looking out for that, to be able to rapidly demate and install a replacement engine. For example, if one breaks up or something like that, like if one fails or something and they wanted to quickly replace it, like you got to think about that for the future when they actually want to reuse these boosters and ships very fast. You kind of think about having being able to replace the engine rapidly. And yeah, I think that's something that I'm really excited to look out for, and hopefully we get something from Tim's video, for example. Maybe in the other parts they talk about that.
yeah, speaking of Tim's video, I'm trying to scroll in chat right now and find it, but somebody right when we started and we're talking about that said, "No spoilers, please. I haven't watched it yet." And I'm just gonna throw this out there. We are going to be talking about that video probably
Yeah.
quite a bit
Yeah.
today. So if you're looking for a spoiler-free experience, this is not it. Just right off the bat, if you don't want any spoilers for the Tim Dodd Everyday Astronaut part 1 of the Elon interview, maybe watch this after that, or pause this.
I
And go
mean,
watch
you
it.
can hire us talk about it and then go and watch the Tim's video for context. Like, I don't think it has to be sequential per se.
For
you
sure.
know?
I'm just for anybody that's like a spoiler purist. I just wanted to throw that out there. of course, keep watching us. We're good. You like us, watch us. But we do have a lot of questions coming in, and you guys don't forget you can ask questions by tagging NASA Spaceflight in chat, and we will potentially answer it. And talking about Raptors and their rapid install on Booster 4 and their potential impending install on Booster 7, we have a couple questions related to that. Here is one from, let's see, Amiga Clone saying, when they placed the 29 Raptors on Booster 4, did they do a full install or just attach the engines? And we have a couple questions along the same line of reasoning from a couple different people. Some people saying they didn't actually make all the connections. They just bolted the Raptors to the booster, which I still think is a fast operation compared to what we've seen in the past. But do we know if those engines were actually fully connected up or if they were just sort of bolted on there?
I'll leave that to Alex because I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, well, one of the initial thinkings, at least even from myself, was that they were not totally hooked up. Like it was just like the bolts just bolting it and not the plumbing or anything. But then we saw, I think within the next few days when they rolled out Booster 4 and everything, and we saw one of the pictures from below that Elon posted. They were racing the booster basically into the launch mount. They were fully connected. Like you could zoom in. Like it was so detailed that you could zoom in and you could see all the plumbing connected and things like that. So it was like, okay, was that over the 2 or 3 days that passed between engine installation and like even with that, it's like it's just still kind of curious that they were able to install all engines within 2 or 3 days, whereas with previous ships and things like that, they used to take a long time to prepare the ship for even static fire. But we've seen with Booster 4 and Ship 20, we've seen them basically improving from that step they were before. And yeah, like hopefully we're seeing another step in that direction where we just see more improvements in how the Raptors are installed. The processes are accelerated and everything. That's going to be interesting to watch.
What we'll definitely see is, because Booster 7 is going to need to progress into actual static fire testing, and you, of course, can't just bolt the engines in that case. You need all the plumbing hooked up, all the electrical and data connections, things like that. So we will see, one way or the other, what a full installation procedure looks like, at least as far as timeline goes. It also will be interesting, and I'm just going to start asking my own questions here because it's relevant. Maybe Chad has also asked the same question. How many engines are we going to see installed on Booster 7? Are they going to start by just installing a center cluster of a few? Are they going to go for all of them, but maybe only test a couple at a time?
That's a good question.
That's what I would like to know, is what the actual static firing campaign is going to look like.
We even do have a question in the queue along those same lines. How many Raptors is it going to get? Are they going to throw them all on there immediately? But before we jump to that, just really quickly, we did see Booster 4 do igniter tests, which means that at some point, whether or not it was immediately or not, Booster 4 did have all the appropriate connections, or at least the appropriate connections for the engines that did the igniter tests. So just wanted to throw that point of data out there. But regarding B7, I mean, it would make sense to me to just install them all, and then if you're going to do a subset testing with a small group of them, you just do a small group of testing. But I mean, who knows? To me, install them all at the launch at the build site, roll it out, and then if you want to do partial testing, then do partial testing. But if you only install some and then you have to roll the booster to the launch site, test it, and then roll the booster back to the production site and install the rest. I mean, I think they could install them at the launch site too, but it might be more of a pain. So I would say it's going to get a full complement of 33.
Yeah, they're both 33 engines, right?
But maybe they'll throw 29 on there, or it depends on how many Raptors they have in Boco right now. We haven't seen the next Tim video where he talks about Raptors with Elon, but that might give us some insight into how many they're going to install. But we'll just have to wait.
That's my other thought, is if it's not a giant pain in the butt to install engines at the launch site, they can install, the first subset that they're going to fire, go test those while additional engines arrive in Boca, and then by the time they finish that first static firing, they might be like, okay, we have the engines for the next ring around the center, and we'll add those in and fire those, and etc. So could just be a matter of that as well. But definitely, I think it is safe to say that we would expect a sort of iterative static fire campaign. They're not going to go, all right, first booster 7 static fire, 33 engines, let's go. That's probably not what's going to happen.
Yeah, I will expect a minimal amount of, at least, like, I'm not sure how many they're gonna install this time around. Like, I can even think of moving the booster to the launch site with, I don't know, like 13 engines or something, then do a couple of static fires, move it back to the highway or Megabay, one of those, and then like do more checks, finish it a little bit more, then install more engines. Then like I can even see Booster 7 doing a couple of parades, back and forth from the launch site and back to the production site.
That's true. I
Just
guess
so
if
that
they
they can
wanted
check
to
it out a
install,
few times.
sure. And if they wanted to just install engines at the launch site, then why did they roll it back in the first place? So I guess yeah, they could even do a static fire, roll back to the production site, add more engines, roll back out, static fire. They don't have to do it at the launch site to do that sort of iterative approach if they want. So
Yeah, because they have a lot of stuff. Like we've seen, there are stuff missing from Booster 7, and so perhaps they're gonna just install some of the engines, not all of them, and they're gonna roll it out, do the static fire, check out that Booster 7 is okay, and because we're obviously wondering whether it's gonna fly or not, and obviously if it's not gonna fly, why do you want to finish it? Like yeah, you could probably finish it to train the people, but Booster 8 is just right around the corner, so you can basically train those people in building the booster by building Booster 8, and so there's also this thing whereas if Booster 7 goes to the pad, static fires a couple of times, and then they break it again for some reason, which we hope it doesn't, but you never know, right? There's still that chance that they have to roll it back, and now finish it off for launch preparations if they actually want to finally launch it, with ship 24 on top. But I was thinking like that could also be an option where they just ready Booster 7 right now for a quick trip to the pad for static fire test, perhaps next week. We don't know, but who knows, right? Like at this point, it's even sort of like a position where probably they're not fully sure of how things will go, but they obviously have their plans, right? And I can see that being a thing where they go to the pad, do a couple static fires, then go back to the production site, finish Booster 7, make it flight ready, a launch configuration stuff with the grid fins, all the chines and things like that, and then go back to the pad and now do the full, like all engines firing, and then put a ship on top, and all of that stuff ahead of launch. So that could be a thing, I think.
I think it makes sense to test Booster 7 regardless of if it's going to fly or not, just because the way that SpaceX has been manufacturing these test vehicles is sort of in pairs, where if you remember Ship 16 and SN15 were kind of paired off, and sort of when they do that, I mean Booster 7 and Booster 8 could sort of be thought of as a pair, and if they manage to test Booster 7, then they're getting data that is valuable for the testing of Booster 8. So even if they don't fly Booster 7, even if they don't plan to fly Booster 7 after its transfer tube issues, even though they were able to do that repair, it might make sense to test Booster 7, because then if there's something that needs to be changed, they can change it on Booster 8 before it needs to be fully assembled. Because when something is fully assembled, it's probably much bigger of a pain to get in there and change something around versus when it hasn't been stacked yet. And we've seen that Booster 8 sort of has its LOX tank ready to go, and maybe that's part of it too. Is that by testing Booster 7, even if they don't intend to fly it, they get valuable data for Booster 8 because they're kind of clones of each other. But we do have a question here from Peter saying B7 isn't flying, is it? I at this point, it's it's anybody's guess. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't.
Right, yeah. And the other consideration that I'll add to that conversation is the fact that finally, after months of no, they're not going to get environmental approval anytime soon, we actually might be in the last month of the environmental approval process this time, based on a couple of the milestones that the FAA has now checked off for that programmatic, I think that's the right amount of syllables, environmental assessment, which of course still has to precede a launch license. So we're still, a month plus or minus some margin for actual launch readiness as far as the regulation side goes. But knowing that that timeline is coming to a close somewhat soon, that's another question is, how many more iterations does SpaceX want to make? How much data does SpaceX want before accepting that the next data collection will be the flight event? Because obviously the flight event is a data collection event in and of itself. But
I think
every time you build,
already, they would.
Maybe. I guess that raises my question. Could they also just fly Booster 7, already having a bunch of data saying, yeah, we would improve Booster 8, but we could also fly Booster 7 to get even more data out of it before making additional changes and things like that. So, is it worth waiting for Booster 8 if they have the approval to launch with Booster 7?
It's a good question. I think as soon as they're ready to fly with any test article, as soon as they have approval, they are going to do another one of their they're going to do another one of their surges and just get all hands on deck, get everything buttoned up and tied up and ready to go for orbit and fly with whatever they have that's ready to go. I mean, it's just I can't imagine that they are going to want to delay for Booster 8, we have more confidence in it because of X or Y. Let's wait a month for it to be fully complete. It's like, no, just fly, get the data, and move on.
Because you'll get way more data from the flight test than you would by waiting for Booster 8.
And if they find something in that flight test that means that Booster 8 can't fly, then so be it. It'll become a Ship 16 situation or a Booster 5 situation, and it'll just go over to the rocket garden and hang out until they can scrap it or use it for some other testing or what have you. But let's see. So, I mean, we talked about it a little bit right there. True Architect is asking, what is keeping Starship from launching? And that is basically a combination of things, right? It's Stage 0 readiness, everything on the ground side that needs to be ready, which seems to be reaching a point where it is complete, or at least complete enough to attempt a launch.
But I will add that part of proving Stage 0 readiness is, do they have a booster and ship ready to be tested with the ground service equipment, right? So
so part of it is ground systems readiness, and then the other part of it is the FAA approval situation. So, and to anyone that is like, oh, the FAA is holding up the Starship, it's it's political or this or that. It's just simply not. There are things that SpaceX still needs to do in order to be ready for launch, and part of that is the ground side situation, and part of that is just having a booster ready to go. They have been diligently building up their stock of Raptor 2 engines and, compiling a flight set of 33 or however many they're going to use. And it's a matter that even if SpaceX had gotten FAA approval last month, they still would not have been ready to launch last month. And maybe they could have done a surge if they had approval and, put the pedal to the metal. But the fact of the matter is right now, there's a couple different things. It's vehicle readiness, it's ground side readiness, and it's regulatory approval. So those are sort of what's keeping Starship from launching right now. Let's see. Jeff Bezos is asking, do you expect the Megabay to be completed and be filled with vehicles? Well, it's filled with vehicles now. It's got Booster 7 in it and at least part of Ship 16 in there. So it's got vehicles in it now. When do I expect it to be completed? I don't know, sometime in the next month or two. They'll get the top finished off, and then they'll do more, interior work. I think we've heard that the top of the Megabay is going to be a office space of some kind, maybe like a control situation, or maybe like an observation area, or who knows. But you can see that you can physically see in this camera view that the top of the high bay sort of has like a single floor, And it looks like, if you just do a comparison side by side here, you can see that the top of the Megabay has what looks like space for 2 floors. So significantly more space on top of the Megabay. So we'll have to see what they use that for and how long it takes them to use it for outfitting. But they're already using the Megabay for vehicles right now. They have used the bridge cranes in there to attach to Ship 16's nose, and they cut off Ship 16's nose. So the cranes in the Megabay are in use, and we are seeing it being used right now. So that's kind of the answer there, Jeff.
Well, I'll add to that, and this is going to be our first reference into the Tim video, because he did ask about the status of the Megabay. And so Elon said in that video, whenever that particular clip was filmed, which I sure wasn't filmed yesterday, they said about a month to finish Megabay. So that kind of tracks with what we've seen. And then the big thing about the Megabay, comparing it to some of the other production facilities that they have there, is they're really looking to add more workstations so that they can support a full-fledged production line for these vehicles, boosters, ships, etc. And so
what were the exact numbers? It was like Elon said that the high bay currently has like 4 or 6 workstations or something like that.
I think the high bay, what we refer to as high bay 1 was like only 3 or 4, but that the Mega Bay will be support somewhere around 10 or 12.
Yeah, which is a huge improvement. It's it's a little bit taller, but it's much wider, as I think what Elon said in the interview. So like
so it's not that much about like supporting taller vehicles as much as it's just more than more at any given time.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, one thing that I will point out, the question was about whether it's finished or not, and when it's gonna be filled with vehicles. Down at the Starbase, it's been very usual ever since they built the mid-bay, for example.
Oh, we've got a bunch of fancy cars going by.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there a bunch of Lambos driving down right now?
That's kind of what it looks like, right?
What's going on?
There's a whole bunch of really fancy cars. Looks like some kind of supercar meetup is going on at Starbase right now. You never know what you're going to see at Starbase.
I was looking at it, I was like, at first I was like, oh, someone drove a Lambo, and then I realized it was like a line of them.
Sometimes you might see Jared Isaacman buzz the tower in Alphabet. Sometimes you might see a bunch of Lambos rolling down Highway 4. You just don't know. That's Starbase for you. Sorry, I interrupted you, Alex, but I had to point that out.
No, that was super cool. I really like those kind of cards. Yeah. So, for example, for the Mid Bay, we saw them. I think it was SN3. They were stacking it inside the Mid Bay, and the Mid Bay was like it didn't even have a roof. And they were already stacking there.
Right.
And like booster serial number 1 was built inside. It was not fully stacked, obviously, but like they were stacking some of the barrel sections inside the high bay when it wasn't even finished. So it's again the same thing. The Mega Bay is not finished, but you have booster 7 there, and we've seen them already using it even previously with Ship 16, so it's like it doesn't matter if it's not finished as long as they still have space inside, and wind doesn't really mess up with operations. That's fine. You can just put a vehicle inside and do stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know like how many viewers we have today are like veteran tank watchers or what have you, but if you remember back when they were building like serial number 1. Starship and all that, they were just doing it outside, and there would be crew lifts with like elaborate garbage bag, like wind abatement, like trying to allow the welders to have less of a problem with the wind and sand and everything as they're just working outside and welding. So the fact that they can roll these things in a partially finished bay or high bay or mega bay or whatever it is, and get a little bit of a windbreak situation going on, that alone is pretty huge, because I don't envy the welders that had to be out in the hot Texas summer sun underneath a tarp made of black garbage bags attempting to weld the first Starship prototypes. That was like, by comparison now, that seems really primitive. Yeah, sure, it's a half finished Mega Bay. Who cares? It's better than garbage bags. We got a whole bunch of super chats, and they're getting old, so I do want to show appreciation for the folks that are supporting the channel. We've got Musical Wolves, thank you so much. They say, will the rocket garden look rusty during tonight's total lunar eclipse? What's with the cranes making an X at the wide bay? I didn't notice the cranes making an X, but that would look cool if to get some shots of the rocket garden with the lunar eclipse tonight. That would be nifty, like some red.
I do know, some NSF photographers are known for putting the moon in shots behind starships, Nick. So I wonder if he's got anything planned for tonight. But either way, yeah, I bet there'll be some cool lunar eclipse shots. I know I'm gonna try and take a look myself from Florida. We'll see what kind of view we get.
Yep, same here from California. Terry Heaton, thank you for the support. They say Huntsville was just granted the first license in the U.S. as a commercial spaceport. The initiative began as a way to support Dream Chaser, but it'll be way bigger than that. Wait till you see point-to-point Starship service. That would be cool to see a Starship go from Huntsville to elsewhere. That would be really neat. I'm not too up on that whole situation there, but that's super interesting to hear about.
Yeah,
Let's
I think
see.
that was a little bit ago, but I regardless, the regulation stuff is, we've talked a lot about the FAA approval for Starship orbital test flight. That was the kind of licensing of things is, some might call it kind of the boring part of all of this, but it's just as important, and it kind of shows you what kind of plans are in the works for down the road at different spaceports and what kind of new operations we might see outside of what we consider traditional spaceflight missions and things like that. So,
Yep. And I'm immediately reminded of the whole, when they were trying to get approval to land boosters back at Vandenberg, they had to put headphones on seals and play sonic booms.
Oh
and
boy.
oh
study
yeah,
all of yeah, like the regulatory process may be boring at times, but it also can be hilariously absurd. Let's see, John, thank you for the support. They say, for my first question, my Lil? What? Oh, their kid, Victoria. Hi, Victoria. How hot is the fire that comes out of the engines? Raptors versus Merlins. I have
Ooh.
no idea. I'm sorry. I don't have a good idea.
Yeah, I don't. Is there
Into the
even any way
thousands
to
of Kelvin, probably. Like I don't even think it changes that much between Raptor and Merlin. It's just like too hot.
Okay, all right. My engineering education does tell me there are ways to calculate this. However, I think I would need to know enough info to be violating ITAR to actually do that
Yeah.
for the real engines. Vary is the word that comes to mind.
Yeah,
But
very
yeah,
hot.
I'm sure SpaceX knows the exact numbers, but I don't know if we'd have that information, unfortunately.
Yeah, just extremely, extremely hot. That's a really good question, though, Victoria. I'm sorry that we don't have a better answer for you there, but thank you for asking it. Just because there's not a good or clear answer to a question does not mean you should not ask it. So, good question. Maybe in one of the upcoming Tim and Elon interviews, they'll discuss it. There's going to be a whole one of those parts, one of the 4 parts of the episode is going to be talking about raptors a lot. We know, so hopefully we get some insight into that for your question there.
Yeah, some
George,
people in chat are just seeing, well, actually, different engine, different fuels, different temperatures. It's like, okay, it's different temperature, but like for a few hundred degrees of differences. It's not like 3,500 or something like that to 3,700. That's still very hot.
and there is the whole thing too, where on Raptor 2 they deleted the igniters, and so it's just a hot gas interaction, and is extremely, extremely efficient combustion. So perhaps that leads to higher temperatures. I don't know. I am not a physicist or a chemistryologist, so
And geologist.
yeah. So I am unfortunately not super knowledgeable there, but like I said, maybe we'll find out in one of the next Tim videos. George, thanks for the support. They say, I saw a video from McGregor's site with Raptor 2 exploding. Do we know about that, pushing the limits, or RUD? I mean, Raptors explode on the test stand. It's sort of what they do. It's what they've been doing for the entire test program for Raptor engines. It's not news. It's not the end of the world. It's not even really remarkable. It's just, that's part of testing, is you test things. Sometimes they explode. Sometimes you test them to failure. Sometimes you were not testing them to failure and they explode. But who cares? That's what testing is for. If you don't test, you will have problems down the line. So lots of testing means encountering lots of issues and encountering, lots of success. So I don't think we know really any super detailed information about any of the RUDs that we've seen, but we just know that that's sort of part of testing. And yeah, not Tim B in chat says all tests are good tests. So I think that is a good summary there. Moldy Space says Thomas Fan Club. Thank you, Moldy Space, for always
Thank you, Moldy
popping
Space.
I
in.
wanted to say, yeah, very thank you to Moldy. He's a very like he's always being an NSF viewer, and yeah.
Yep.
One thing that I wanted to say about the McGregor question is that many people were concerned about the status of the stands, and we've seen them firing off from those same stands this week, like 3 or 4 times already. So it's obviously not a huge issue. Obviously, you still care a little bit that the stand is okay and everything, but they are built with that in mind, right? In the case of a rod, they still can sort of survive. You just dust off and put another engine and fire it again, right?
Yep.
Also, another thing we know from Elon is that they're looking up for, looking out for upgrades to Raptor 2, like less cooling on the throat, like film cooling on the throat, and like remove flanges everywhere and things like that. Like, we know they're doing upgrades. So we've seen a lot of engines, especially now with the NSF Live McGregor feed that we have. Many people are able to see how many Raptor engines fire, and they seem just fine. Like, they fire for 2.5 minutes, for like a long time, right? And they do a lot of tests.
Oh, we're taking a look at a replay of one of the explosions that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Yep,
So there's ignition.
You can see it start up.
And it's going to go a couple
Boom.
seconds, and then, yep.
Exactly.
Wait, listen. Pop.
Yeah, that really is just a pop, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that is what it is. It doesn't look super fun, but also that's why you test. It's not the biggest deal. And this is, like we were saying, from the 24/7 McGregor live stream that we have going now, relatively new thing. And thanks so much to Das and Michael for putting a whole bunch of work into making that thing happen.
That's been very, very useful, especially I think for the public to see, if you put in a level sort of like how many Raptors are being are failing on the stands versus all of them that we are seeing firing for a long time. Like, I don't see them failing a lot. Like, I don't know, it's still a decent ratio of how many are being successful on the stands versus the ones that rod, especially the ones that rod with a boom, the ones that rod and it's just like they shut down. That's okay-ish, it's like okay-ish, because if you were to fly with that one and that occurs, well, it just shuts down. You have many other engines, right? But if it blows up, then you have sort of like an SN11 situation, where your ship just basically breaks up and pieces everywhere of your rocket. So obviously you don't want that kind of situation, and that's why it is important to test these things out there at McGregor, so that you remove all of that risk and are able to improve the engine design.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. You're not going to know when an engine is getting sketchy and needs to be shut down unless you explore all of the edge cases and all of the different parts of the operating envelope. And then with that information, you can then have the computers on board a ship or booster see something that is known off nominal and shut an engine down as something is going awry. That's just all part and parcel of why you test. So that's a good question there. Really quickly, a couple more super chats before they get too stale. Musical Wolves, thank you so much for the support there. Again, Scott Ellis, thank you for the support. They say, remember a few months ago, the skin on top of one of serial number 15's aft flap was removed. Was it ever replaced? No, it was, I think, turned into like an employee perk. Like, they gave out pieces of the skin to various employees, I think. Let's see. Jim, thank you for the support, saying yes to Musical Wolves. James Juries, thank you for the support. They say Elon saying ship might not have forward flaps in the future. It's evolving just backwards. I mean, we've seen Elon say a lot of things. I think when you watch an interview like what Tim and Elon do, it's sort of like two people just kind of hanging out and shooting the breeze. And you can infer things from that, but don't take anything that is said necessarily as like a concrete thing that will absolutely happen. Like
Right.
it's almost like
It's
a
all things that are like under consideration or
yeah.
being studied or things like that.
Yeah, it's almost like a brainstorm, right? And even in the Tim interview that we just got, like when talking about the forward flaps, Elon says like it's a constant topic of discussion. Him and oh man, I forget the employee that he was with at that point in the video. But yeah, it's apparently all of these discussions are ongoing. You got to believe that at whatever interval they do design meetings for Starship and Booster, there's certain things that will just like come up and they'll talk about and talk through, and sometimes things will change and sometimes they'll stay the same. And so, I mean, who knows? Maybe maybe the nose cone will change shape and get completely pointy, and they'll put the flaps kind of sticking out the back, almost like
Oh man,
wings or so. Like, who knows? Things could change. Don't
Crayon
ever,
Starship.
yeah, right. Don't ever anticipate things to stay the same, because the arrow of time means things will change. So
All propulsively landed vehicles will eventually evolve to DCX.
yes, thank you.
Oh,
You know,
jeez.
it's so wild to me.
Like-
I'm on a bit of a tangent, but it's like there was a show when I was a kid in like elementary school. It was called Beyond 2000, and it was just a show that was like a future oriented show, and it would talk about all the cool stuff that's coming in the year beyond 2000. And I distinctly remember watching footage of the DCX and being like, "Oh my god, this is going to be awesome. Like this makes perfect sense." And then like a couple years later seeing on, I think, some horrible History Channel show or something like Beyond, like Modern Marvels or something, like seeing footage of the DCX like landing failure, and then the one line summary from the narrator being like, and then the program was canceled. And it's like, no, don't do that. Like, so it's just good. I'm glad that we're finally vertically landing rockets. It makes me happy. Anyways, sorry, I had to throw that in there. Trip down memory lane.
Mhm.
I'm going to get through these super chats. I swear, there's only 4 left. Mike Smith, thank you. They say, spoiler alert, I haven't finished watching today's NSF live chat yet. That's hilarious. Thanks for the support there, buddy. James
me
Juries,
neither. I'm watching it right now.
James Juries, thank you again for the flap comment, or another one. Ticonderoga, thank you for the support. They say, hey folks, do you think once FAA approval is ready, we can witness non-splash Starship flight that will trade safety of the base for speedy develop? I think they'll still splash down the first, at least the first one, maybe the first couple. And Space Shuttle Discovery says, I'm better than Starship and I'm better than Atlantis. Sorry, not sorry, Chris. That's your opinion, Space Shuttle Discovery. Thanks for the support. And lastly here, John, thank you for the support. Victoria also wants to know, what are the safety protocols in place at the launch site in case the rocket blows up? Well, that's why there's a keep out zone. It's typical in the industry to have a certain radius around the launch site where people are not allowed to go when there are launch activities, when the vehicle is fueled, and all of that. So definitely, safety is important. Keeping people safe is important, and that keep out zones, hazard areas are all part of that. So when they are going to be launching from Starbase or from anywhere, they clear the area and they have tools in place to ensure the area stays clear. Whether that is like at Kennedy Space Center, where they have like helicopters going around looking at the beach, or at Starbase Boca Chica, they definitely use a lot of drones for that sort of thing. So all of that is sort of, they have tools at their disposal to keep people away, and they do. So that is that.
One thing they don't have here is the gators.
That's true, but they do have like the Portuguese man of war jellyfish. I've seen so many of those washed up on Boca Chica Beach. So that's, it's not necessarily a gator or anything. And there's snakes. There's also a lot of snakes. So
really quick, just a quick thank you to all of the support that came in with those super chats and things. We really do appreciate that. I do know there's another way that if you want to support what we do here at the channel, we've got some merch that goes with what we were just talking about with the Raptor engines. We've got some new Raptor Wrangler merch. I have been told that we want to definitely push that today because, I mean, look at it. So if you are a fan of the channel and support what we want, or want to support what we do, go ahead and check out the NASASpaceflight.com shop. And there's Raptor merch. There's plenty of other, there's a whole bunch of merch, but Raptor's some of the new stuff. There's also the whole Texas Tank Watchers collection. If you have not joined that group yet, just a big thank you to everyone who supports all of what we do in whatever way you do. The merch is definitely a cool way to show off your support as well, so we appreciate that.
yeah, there's like a bunch of different ways to support what we do. The merch is like a cool way to both support what we do and have a cool thing, like a physical thing that you get in return. So definitely look at the merch store if you're so inclined. There's other ways to support us as well. There's a membership program. There is even just like clicking the like button. So definitely appreciate all the support from everybody. That I particularly like the landing club member shirt because that is a commemoration of SN15 successfully landing and hence the XV there on the Starship. So definitely check out some of that merch if you are so inclined. We really appreciate the support because that support means we can keep doing what we do, and we all like to do what we do. So thanks everybody. Let's see. Bum bum bum. Well, here SpaceX Blue is asking about the top flaps, which is again the thing from that most recent Tim Elon interview. So what do you guys think? Where do you fall on this? Do you think future ships will not have forward flaps, or what do you think the future holds? And this is obviously pure speculation, but with a grain of knowledge, knowing that it's something that Elon and SpaceX are thinking about.
Yeah, I would like to know that the one they didn't really talk a whole lot about why the forward flaps are such an issue. Like Elon at one point just said like they're the wrong size, they're the wrong shape, and they're in the wrong location. Like he said there was a lot of work or room for improvement with the forward flaps. He also mentioned, like you said at one point, that hey, and he made a shuttle reference. He's like the space shuttle didn't have forward flaps. It's possible that Starship won't. So, and I think, and this is going to be, I'll put up the flashing speculation banner here, but my engineering speculation would be it's mostly just a center of pressure consideration, and if they can get the center of pressure for the reentry and descent profile where it needs to be with only one set of flaps, mainly the aft flaps, then maybe that's what they're trying to aim for. It is sometimes easier to have the two different sets of flaps. That gives you a better kind of control authority over your vehicle, but they also talked a little bit about grid fins on the first stage and how they actually want to remove or reduce the number of grid fins as well. Again, trying to simplify manufacturing and assembly, reduce dry mass, things like that. And so if they have excess control authority that can be removed in order to save weight, that sounds like something that SpaceX is still aiming to do. And that's been a theme throughout the entire Starship program, is really trying to, almost to the extreme, reduce the dry mass of these vehicles. See the complete lack of landing legs, and let's catch it with a tower instead, right? That only saves you a couple landing legs worth of mass on your vehicle, but they think that's worth it. So that kind of decision is it's probably that kind of thinking that's making them really look really hard at the forward flaps. They also talked a little bit about how the heat shield and the heat protection interacts with those flaps, because as the flaps have to pivot, there is potential for gaps to form as the flaps are moving where you might not have the best heat protection there. So maybe they're just looking to reduce potential points of failure as far as the heat shield goes.
Yeah, they mentioned it in the interview. Elon mentioned the hot gas seal that has to occur at the hinge where the flap articulates, which I do not envy any engineer that has to work on that, because it seems like an insanely hard problem. And we've even known about that. We've known about that for a while. I think maybe since the last interview with Tim, I think is where we heard about that. Like, that's a particularly devilish problem with the system as is. So if they can avoid having to even deal with it by deleting those flaps, you better believe that they will. But we'll just have to sort of wait and see what happens. For one, I like the way Starship looks right now, just like from an aesthetic point of view. And if they change it significantly, maybe it's just because I'm so used to the current configuration, I'm going to be kind of bummed out.
Right.
But if it means that we have a more reliable vehicle, if it means we have a better capability in terms of payload to orbit or what have you, I'm all for it. I like the design as it is right now. It looks correct, even if it's not the most optimized in certain ways. And we're looking right now at Ship 24 in High Bay 1, along with what is that booster?
I
8
think
LOX
it's
and
part of
Ship
Booster 8,
24.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's the
Booster
LOX
8's LOX
tank of
tank
Booster
is
8.
hooked up to the crane in the High Bay, so we could see that being lifted up here in a little bit. Anybody else want to go on the top flaps there for Starship, or we want to move on?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, the conversation that Elon had with Tim about that. It kind of reminds me of the old ITS and BFR 2017 designs, because the original ITS design didn't have any flaps at all. Like I remember just Elon talking about having like super mega powerful thrusters, and that will be everything to control the orientation of the vehicle, and it was like, eh, like now in hindsight, it's like that wouldn't have worked probably. And then the one from 2017, the design from 2017, it actually had like two small delta wings on the aft section, but it didn't have any sort of canards or front flaps or anything. That came actually with a 2018 one, when they actually had like three flaps on the bottom for landing and everything, and then the ones up front. That was sort of a weird I don't know, design for a Starship. Like, I don't know. And then seeing them actually talking about, the forward flaps, we might not actually need them. That sort of reminds me of how, early iterations actually didn't have them on the designs. It's like perhaps we're gonna see a regression in that sense. That, well, we've gone this route. Maybe it's not the best that decision that we have gone through, but you never know.
Maybe the ship will get chines, and the chines will shift the center of pressure enough that they'll be able to delete the forward flaps. Who knows?
And then
Ooh.
and then the evolution of Starship towards the space shuttle just continues, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
right. Chris B will be happy. Let's see. Starship is asking, how will they deploy Starlinks on the first flight? If it is on a suborbital trajectory, can they raise the orbit that quickly? Well, Elon pushed back pretty hard, saying that it's essentially orbital velocity. I think the difference is like 30 meters a second in delta V, which is really, really, really small. So I imagine the Starlink satellites could, apply their own engines to boost themselves that extra 30 meters a second of delta V. I don't know. What do you think, Thomas?
On a first orbit that's not even stable, I would be highly skeptical of. I was actually a little not completely satisfied by Elon's answer to that question, because Tim was asking, the original profile was, so like you said, just shy of orbital velocity, so you didn't have to bother with the deorbit burn. It still proves out the fact that it can reach orbit. You just shut down the engines a couple of seconds early. Not even, it might have been a second early. And if you're not carrying a payload, then that's perfect. However, if you're going to deploy a Starlink satellites don't have Raptor thrust. They use ion propulsion, which is a very high efficiency but low thrust system. I do not think it's actually feasible to deploy, unless you're going to deploy like one satellite. You would need. I don't think a suborbital insertion and then have the satellite circularize like immediately is actually feasible. So when Tim asked that, Elon did at one point say like full orbit, and then he just kind of went into talking about how it was, the profile was essentially orbital velocity. So it was unclear whether they have changed the flight profile or not, but I would find it very hard to believe that they haven't if they are deploying Starlink satellites. So my expectation is that Starship will go fully orbital, deploy the satellites, and do a deorbit burn before the reentry test.
Interesting.
Now that there are
Okay.
Starlinks on board.
Or it could just be dummy Starlinks, right? Like,
Right,
just as
or
a test of
they're
the
just testing the deployment mechanism, and they're gonna be, just sheets of metal that re-enter and disintegrate. That is one potential, but then I wouldn't think that I feel like Elon would have said that and pointed out that they're not actually Starlinks.
But then again, that kind of like, Elon is nothing if not a showman, right? He is extremely adept at presenting information that will get people excited and presenting information that makes SpaceX or whatever of his companies he is talking about at the time look as good as possible. And I would not be surprised if he would just avoid talking about them being dummies, because it makes it look not as good, if that makes sense.
It's also one thing to note that Starlink V2s haven't been approved for deployment in orbit, in operations.
Yeah.
Obviously, not operations with customers, but like in general, the frequencies that they have to use and everything with the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Excuse me. And so I think that's also another thing that they have to apply for once they actually go and deploy them, even for a test flight. Because even, we've seen for Falcon 9 flights, they have had prototype flights with transport missions, for example, launching a few of them that are not part of the constellation per se, and things like that. They were just prototypes and were not approved, but they made some kind of like just a special one for that in that flight only, and so we haven't seen that yet coming. We have all of the websites. We're always checking. Actually, the other day I was checking the FCC website for any sort of updates on Starlink, on Starship, and things like that. I just didn't see anything, and it kind of leads me to think it's either gonna be dummies, so they're gonna be non-operable. They're just gonna be what's the name? Boilerplates, basically, right? Or they're simply not ready enough yet to say, hey, we're gonna send out the filings, to the permits and everything to the FCC so that they approve them. That could be also another thing, because if there are like 2 or 3 months out, there might be like, this doesn't really need to be approved already. We're gonna send it a little bit later down the road. And yeah, the FCC doesn't really put a lot of things in the way to approve prototype flights. It's the actual whole constellation, V2 constellation of the Starlink, where they're right now still studying and reviewing SpaceX's approach and like plans for it. So it's not approved yet. So yeah, that's another thing that's gonna be coming up soon. Probably make a lot of people mad, just like with the FAA. But yeah, approvals, lots of paperwork and stuff like that. It's not easy,
Yep. Here is one. Jamal is asking, why does Starship need helium? That's another thing from the interview. There is Elon mentioned that Starship has helium on board. It's for Raptor startup, isn't it? Like, they do a helium spin start on Raptor, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, they use the helium for spin up of the pumps, and basically use they also use gaseous oxygen and gaseous methane for the torch igniters and things like that. So yeah, like they still have a lot of things. That ideal Mars ship where they go to Mars and just use the things that are on Mars, which is basically the production of methane and oxygen out of the atmosphere of Mars and the water and everything. That's still a bit away, but they'll get there. Like, that's obviously not be coming up anytime soon. But in the meantime, if they have to use a little bit of helium, that's not really that bad.
Yeah, and like on Raptor 2, there is no torch igniters. That's just a Raptor 1 thing, right? So that's one thing to be deleted, but you still need to get the pumps spinning.
They have torch igniters on the turbopumps, because you have to have something to ignite the turbopumps. They don't have them on the main combustion chamber.
Got it.
That's sort of the way that it goes, because you still have to start the engine, like the turbopumps start the main chamber, right? In that sense, with this new approach.
Yep.
And someone pointed out on chat, aren't they supposed to use autogenous pressure? We're not talking about that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, that's totally different, and that's the pressurization of the tanks, not anything to do with the engines. Well, kind of has to do with the engines, but not in that sense.
That's hilarious. I was looking right at that. That was from 122 Chris NG. I was going to answer that, but you beat me to it. Yeah, the autogenous pressurizations for the tanks of the ship. We're talking specifically about how do you start a Raptor engine, and that is by spinning helium. You don't use at least not yet, you don't use oxygen or methane to spin start the turbo pumps, because those turbo pumps have to be running to pump. It's a chicken and the egg thing. Like, you have to start the turbo pumps to get the stuff flowing into the engines, so you can. It's like a whole. Yeah, you get it.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Duarte is asking, will there be assembly?
Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking that we were talking about Tim's video, and he also released a recent video about cycles of engines.
Yes.
So that's a very in-depth video about that, and we're real like that's really good video.
I absolutely love that video. And basically all the ones that Tim puts out, but that recent engine cycle explainer video is so good. It's like when you think you know about a subject, and then you learn a whole lot. It's like, okay, this definitely was a huge resource for me. So that video is not only really in depth, but also really well explained. So where you don't have to be super knowledgeable going into it. There's diagrams and everything that make it just so good. Let's see here. Duarte is asking, will there be assembly of Starships in the Cape, or will they be shipped from Starbase to the Cape? I think the short answer to that one is yes. They are gearing up to be able to build Starships at the Cape. They're building a factory, and they're building high bays or mega bays or whatever you want to call them, all at the Roberts Road facility. And shout out to our most recent Cape flyover. That is why we are doing the Cape flyovers. At least part of the reason is because we want to keep track of the progress that is going on there. And that is all at SpaceX's facility. It's called Roberts Road because that's the road that it's on. So if you haven't checked out our most recent Cape flyover video, check out that and the Roberts Road section. You'll see where they are building the factory and the high bays and stuff for the Cape side. However,
super exciting.
There you go. You can see that is Hangar X. There's a Falcon Heavy side booster sitting outside of it, and then off to the left of that, it's 64.
10 out of 10 editing.
Off to the, I should have put in a wee sound effect. Off to the left of this facility here is where all of that Starship infrastructure will get built. You can see in the top of the frame there, the top left corner, that is the area where they're building the high bays and the ship.
Can I point out
factory.
one rapid thing? Just talking about the size, like we're seeing. Oh, scroll back a little bit, Michael, because I wanted to compare the size of Hangar X with the size of the upcoming Starship factory and Megabase and things like that. Like, look at all the land that they have to use for refurbishing, like a handful of boosters. Like, I think it was like 9 boosters they can hold. Obviously, on the left side of this hangar, on the other side is just fairings and things like that. But all of this land to refurbish like a dozen boosters and fairings and things like that, and then compare that to the mega base, where it's like it's about the same footprint. Like a mega base like half the footprint of one of the like the Hangar X building, but it can basically support like what, a dozen boosters or things like that, which is what Elon said. So you can see here,
just look
like
at
that's
all
the
of that
production.
space.
Yeah, you have a lot more processing capability because it's just vertical. You just build up, but the land that you cover is actually less. So you have like some kind of improvement there, even though it's obviously hard to get higher up. But if you have platforms and workstations and things like that, like they do at Starbase, that's actually more efficient because you don't need as much land to actually process everything. You can see here that they even have land to have the tower. Yeah, amazing render,
so
by the way.
They are actively building the facilities at the Cape right now. So go again, check out that flyover video if you haven't already. But to that point, we're seeing all the tower assembly bits there in that video. John is saying Victoria with another question. What's up, Victoria? Saying Frankencrane. Victoria misses Frankencrane. What are the odds we'll see a crane like that at Kennedy Space Center to do tower segment lifts for the launch tower and table? I think highly likely. It takes a certain kind of crane, and there's only so many that are capable of doing such a thing.
It also seems that this new one is gonna be a tad bit taller. Like
Yep,
we've
that would
seen
make
that
sense.
it has at least 9 levels just from all the pads they have there to build the tower. So that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, clearly they've learned from building the first one in Starbase. I mean, it makes sense. Starbase is the R&D hub, so you
Hmm.
build a thing there, you learn, and you iterate
For
on it
everything.
elsewhere. Yep.
Hmm.
But really quickly, that last question from Duarte was asking, do we think they'll ship stuff to the Cape? I mean, if the factory at Roberts Road is not ready and they have stage 0 and the tower and everything ready to go, and they want to do some lift tests and they want to do some proof tests and test out all the GSE, I could see them shipping vehicles to the Cape. But
Yep.
how? That remains to be seen. I mean, would they fly them to the Cape? Would they do some kind of crazy barge situation like the autonomous drone ships, and you just, instead of just seeing a Falcon 9 vertically floating along on the ocean, you see a booster or a ship, or who knows?
It would be hilarious.
A more
Yeah,
of a
that
hop
would be
per
hilarious,
se.
right? Who knows? But I could see them shipping stuff to the Cape if they if they had a use for it. That would make sense to me. Really quickly, we've got a whole bunch more super chats. Thank you again to everybody for the super chats, helping us pay the bills, pay the data bills for all of these robots, which is absolutely insane. How many we have at this point, and for the robots themselves. Robotic cameras are not cheap. So thank you, everybody. Musical Wolves, thank you. They say Starbase Coyote Security Fund. James Juries says we miss DOS fan club. Well, DOS is out there, building the robot army. So, and he's been on streams. He was on 2 days ago. Yeah, robot army. Point in case right there. It's a bunch of robots and a bunch of data, and you can
I
see
know.
a Falcon 9 first stage there. You can see Raptor engine test stands. Like it's DOS is doing space Jesus's work or space God's work.
Am I crazy? Is it a Falcon 9 or is it a Falcon Heavy booster?
Falcon
Good.
Heavy side booster.
That's what I
Thank you.
thought. I know. I mean, I know they put interstages on it for McGregor, so you can't actually
Yeah.
tell unless you look closer. But it's the Falcon 9 stand that is also Falcon Heavy booster testing. Anyway, I am
There's
looking
actually
forward
a
now that
way.
McGregor Live is a thing. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to the first McGregor Live, core
Oh.
firing. That'll be cool.
That's going to be awesome. There's actually a way to know whether it's a Falcon 9 or a Falcon Heavy side booster or a Falcon Heavy center core. First of all, the Falcon 9 boosters have the Falcon 9 logo on them, so it's very easy to figure out which one it is. And that one doesn't have any Falcon Heavy logo, but also or Falcon 9 logo. Falcon Heavy center cores have the Falcon Heavy logo on them,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
and also don't have any SpaceX logos on the sides.
Right.
You can see there. We can see very
You can see the
faintly that it's
SpaceX
there.
lettering down the side,
Exactly.
but without a
You
Falcon
see-
9 logo, so that means it's a Falcon
Exactly.
Heavy side booster.
uh-huh.
And side boosters only have the SpaceX logo on one side because the other one is going to be covered by the Falcon Heavy center core. It doesn't make sense to paint the other side of the booster. But the booster that flew yesterday, I think it was yesterday, right? On Starlink mission, that actually is the same. It's like a Falcon Heavy side booster, but it flew as Falcon 9. And
Right,
it turns
yeah.
out it's sort of like future proofing because this booster, not the one that we're seeing in picture right now, but the one that was before, the
flew
two
yesterday.
boosters before, the one that flew yesterday, basically, that one flew as Falcon 9 booster, but on its 7th flight is going to fly as Falcon Heavy side booster. So it seems like they are future-proofing these boosters, sort of like removing some of the layering, the logos, and things like that. So it's going to be a little bit harder to know which booster is which once, like, I think that's probably going to be coming up for Falcon 9 boosters, because at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to put any logos. Like, you just fly them, and you fly them either Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy side booster, that's it. Like,
Yep.
it's not really that hard.
I still just love that they can switch them back and forth like that. It's something that we
Yeah.
had heard about and talked about for so long, and some people were like, no, it takes way more work, it's impossible, and some people were like, no, it's totally a thing. And here we are. It just makes sense. It's like, yeah, Falcon 9s, they're like Legos. Stack them however you like. They connect together. This is how it's supposed to work.
They're certainly getting there where they just know a lot about the rocket. That's gonna be super exciting when they get to that point with the Starship, where it's just like they can change things here and there. Like, I don't know, like a flap doesn't work, they just put another one or something. Like, it's just
Yep.
going to be very Lego-like.
James Jurries is asking, is the Raptor tripod in McGregor the same height as the orbital launch mount? Also, what's the tower next to the Falcon 9 core? Falcon Heavy side core. I think that's the structural test stand for Falcon 9, but I'm not sure. And I don't know the height of the Raptor tripod, but I did want to put that out there because they gave us a super chat. So thank you, James. Somebody will have to do the math. Let's see. Really quickly, also James asking, what are your thoughts on Booster having 2 or 3 grid fins, as discussed in the Tim interview? Also, Starship will look like its 2017 version one day, or will just become Shuttle. One of the two. I hate the Booster having 3.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not alone with that. All right, well, 3. Well, okay.
Especially in the Tim interview, Elon even said it could have 3, and one of the 3 could be like basically really tiny.
That is the worst possible outcome. Yes,
Yeah,
if they're
I assume
not
because they
even
don't
all
need...
the same, I would be very uncomfortable. If it's 3 that are all symmetric and they're all the same size,
yeah,
it might look fine. And you pointed out the original ITS animations showed that. Granted, the grid fins looked way different, but still.
Yep.
2 would be
okay.
Weird. I mean, I don't know. As long as it's not asymmetrical, I think it will probably look fine. And this is all pure aesthetics. Obviously, SpaceX will make sure it's functional, so that's not really what's up for debate. But yeah, if there were 2 big ones and 1 small one, that would look weird.
Just one little nubby one, that would be so bad. But it makes sense from a logic standpoint. If you only need so much control authority in whatever direction that grid fin would be primarily responsible for, then make it tiny, save the mass. But yeah, it would look horrible. I mean, I think not retracting the grid fins, as you can see in this image right there, retract the grid fins, please. Retract the grid fins, please. I know they're not going to, and I know it doesn't matter, but like it just doesn't look good. All right, I'll stop complaining. Flawed Perspective is saying, aren't the chines asymmetrical? Yes, they are asymmetrical. I don't want to talk about it. Asymmetry bad from an aesthetic point of view, but whatever, who cares? It's aesthetics are not functionality. And as we know from Apple products, you don't want to compromise functionality on something just to make it look a certain way.
It was actually interesting to see Elon talking about how the chines are gonna are gonna catch the aero forces and everything during reentry and everything, because we also know just by looking at Booster 7 that there's gonna have more chines to the other side of the booster. It's like, how's that gonna work? Like, ones catch the air and the other ones, what do they do? Like, I feel like
basically 2 are for aerodynamic purposes, and 2 are for control purposes. So that's why I say there's like technically chines and strakes. What we see now on Booster 7, those are chines.
Yeah, there we go.
And then the ones sort of on, I think they're going to be on the belly as compared to that. I
think that's the belly.
Those are technically strakes. I don't know. But yeah, some are for to change the cross sections so that you are aerodynamically advantageous, and then some of them are for straight up control authority because you don't want to spin out of control. But that is my understanding. I could be completely wrong.
So I wanted to point out that I think it was the head of the booster development thing or something. He said something along the lines of the chines are going to be able to reduce the booster velocity when coming down for landing and improve the performance capability of the rocket. We actually talked about that just a month ago on our design changes video, because we saw that thing and it was like, oh, that can actually do this thing. And then he went to say on that video that it actually does what we thought it could do. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Check out the design changes video if you haven't already. I know I'm plugging a lot of our videos, but we've been putting out a lot of videos lately, and I would like nothing more than for them to get a lot of views, because we put a lot of care into those. So that was a nice thing. I was going to ask before we wrap up, and I know we've still got a ways to go here, but I do want to ask, what was both of your favorite parts of the Tim interview? Mine was when they said chines, because I was like, oh, thank God, I wasn't wrong.
Yeah, a lot of discussions about whether chines, strakes, or whatever. They also like I remember him saying the head of the booster design or something, like it has a weird name, the name of the position he's in, but he said something like strakes, chines, and then it was like yeah the chines. So now it's like, what are they? So it's probably even gonna be some kind of combination, as you said before. Like, who knows? there could be both, right?
Yes.
My favorite part, it was when they went into the high bay, like actually going into the high bay next to ship 24 payload bay, because we actually were able to see inside the high bay. I think that was the first time, for at least from like ground level. We've seen a lot of overhead shots, especially from the bar and everything, that Elon has tweeted out, or like official photos by SpaceX. But this was actually the first time that you went in, and it was like, holy moly, this is super big, right? And all, like, there was a workstation and things like that. Like, it was very neat that we had that kind of access.
Yeah, I particularly liked how we kind of got almost a look up underneath the payload section.
And then Elon was like, maybe we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, but it's cool because we saw that rack and that Starlink satellite dispenser installed on the payload barrel and then welded to the nose cone. We saw that on a daily video. I think Mary shot it, and it was like, at the time it was like, is this for payload stuff? This looks like it's for payload stuff. And so that was really cool to see them talk about that and sort of see it from a different angle. Thomas, what was your favorite part?
Yeah, I did really much enjoy the look inside the actual high bay of them just walking around and looking at Ship 24, so I thought that was a really, really cool. I actually, of the discussions they had though, and again, my answer will probably change again when the other parts come out, so I'm looking forward to it, but the first discussion they talked about was using the ullage gas for attitude control. And at first, I've kind of thought that sounds risky, because once you reach the pressure that you need for structural stability, like they talked about, they want to use some of that pressure to help maintain the correct pressures and things that they want for reentry. So you only have so much pressure to work with as far as thrust goes, and then you'll lose attitude control beyond that. But I guess the more you think about it, the more that's really no different than having a dedicated RCS system, because you can just run out of propellant. So as long as you do the math to figure out exactly how much, a thruster firing, how much that, and I shouldn't call it a thruster firing. If you can do the math on how much thrust opening event creates and how much pressure you lose by doing that, you can calculate your margins and figure out exactly how much maneuver and capability you'll have by using that system. And I have full confidence that SpaceX will have done the math and figured out that that's completely acceptable. So that is an interesting way to consolidate your systems. We've seen companies like actually ULA on the new version of Centaur for Vulcan. The RCS system on that stage uses the exact same propellants as the RL-10s. It's the hydrogen-oxygen bipropellant thruster. SpaceX taking that to the extreme, whereas instead of using the same propellant as the Raptor engines, we're going to use the ullage gas from the tanks for the Raptors, as, extreme in the pursuit of simplicity there.
I gotta confess, it bothers me. It bothers me a lot. And because I'm stupid. That's the simple explanation as to why. But SpaceX obviously knows way more than I do, and there's way smarter people there than I am. So I know it's not dumb or anything, but it just sort of bothers me. Like, you're throwing your Raptor fuel overboard, just like, like, we don't need this. We have excess. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of wild to me that that's how they're going to do it. And it strikes me that with a lot of rockets and a lot of systems like this, it's sort of, if you were thinking of like a diagram of how everything works, it's sort of multiple different tracks that all converge for launching. I don't know if this makes any sense, but like, basically a bunch of different systems or subsystems that all work together to accomplish a launch. Whereas with Starship, so many things are more like a knot. Like it's not separate strands that are all converging for a single thing. It's like they are building a knot, or like it's like some sort of Rubik's Cube type puzzle where, well, the autogenous pressurization has to work, so we have enough pressure in the gas tanks for the ullage thrusters, and then we got this. It's just like, oh my god, so much of this is overcomplicated, but all in the sake of simplicity in other ways or efficiency or what have you. It's just Starship's crazy. Anyways. That was okay. That was my question that I wanted to ask. Let's ask a couple more from our viewers, but first I'm going to run through the remaining super chats here as we're getting up to our finish time. JML, thank you for the support. They say we need to go back to the Tintin rocket design. I know a lot of people like that one the most of all the iterations.
Landing on flaps is weird.
Yeah, that's true.
Then again, getting caught by a tower is more weird, so...
That was like the Planet Express ship one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. James Juries, thanks for the support. They say, thoughts on the one NASA group concerned about Starship Pad 39A? I'm not too clear on this.
Oh, the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel did notice that, like, we're cautious about them conducting Starship launches right next to the pad that's required for commercial crew and things like that. It wasn't like anything super serious. It was just like, by the way, we should make sure that there's protections in place where if something blows up on that launch mount, it doesn't level 39A along with it,
Yeah, makes sense. Stefan, I'm not... No, Mars does not have lightning, so I'm not even going to read the rest of your question. But thank you for the support.
Mars does have lightning.
Oh, God, it does? Well, then, yes, 4 towers on Mars. There, I'll put it back up.
I don't know its prevalence relative to Florida, for example, but I know definitely Mars has lightning.
Oh, my God. I had no idea, but that's also stupid 4 towers question. Thank you, Stefan. Ryan, thank you for the support. They say Alex, Jack, and Thomas fan club. That's a generous amount there. Thank you, buddy. Musical Wolves, thanks for the support. They say we need merch saying a Starship, expect the unexpected. That's pretty good. Kevin, thank you for the support. They say thoughts on Ship 16 and the rest of Rocket Garden. Seems like they're scrapping Ship 16. Who knows what's in store for the rest of the stuff in the Rocket Garden. Now including Ship 20. Dun dun dun. Thank you though for the super chat there, buddy. John says, here's one more for me. Thermal protection. How many tiles are produced in a batch at the bakery? How many batches are needed for a ship's coverage? That you're getting into like full-on proprietary information. Like, hello, China? Like, what's going on here? We don't know is the answer. Although, has Ian done a recent count on Ship 20 of like how many tiles there are?
I think
on
Ian
Starship?
tried to count Ship 20 and gave up because of how absurd that it was. So
I don't have like a number in my head for how many tiles are on a ship, so I should probably figure that out or at least ballpark it, and that way know. But I don't know off the top of my head. Oh yeah, look, there's a bakery apron. More merch.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I mean it's apt. It's definitely apt, and the merch is a really good way, once again, to support what we do, especially when the vagaries of the YouTube algorithm mean that videos might not get as many views as they used to, or as we expect, or as we think something that we put a bunch of work into deserves. So the merch is a sort of a really good way to offset that. So thank you to everybody that buys some. Something tells me I need one of these mugs because I'm a mug guy. Even if I'm not drinking something hot, I like to drink it out of a mug. So note to self.
I'm gonna say those looks like Oreos or whatever.
They kind of do, right? Now I want Oreos. Thanks. This stream not sponsored by Oreos, but although Nabisco, our emails are it's business at NASASpaceflight. I mean,
yeah, they're watching.
Stillwind, thank you for the support. They say wind chimes. Douglas Richards, thanks for the support. They say for NASASpaceflight, what approximate time frame from Starhopper to June, July 1st flight? Like how long did it take them to build Starhopper between starting the build and the flight? That's how I'm going to interpret the question, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I think it was like, oh, hang on, I'm gonna search for this. You guys vamp.
I think they're probably asking the time from the Starhopper launch to the July, like the orbital launch, probably. In that case, it's gonna be about 3 years, a few months up and down.
Michael is saying 8 months
minus.
for Starhopper from build to flight, approximately.
Yeah, Starhopper started around November 2018, December, and yeah,
Gotcha.
It took a little while to finish.
But 3 years, I mean, if that's the question being asked, that's sort of really fascinating. Like 3 years from Starhopper to orbital flight, that seems insanely rapid. At the same time as, people like us have been sitting here hanging out, watching every single brick move at the launch site, like it feels like it's taken forever. 3 years is insanely fast, especially in the scale of how long things take. Like I just think of military procurement and like fighter jets, or like the F-22 took like 30 years to. It's like, oh my god, why do these things take so long? Humans only live. Does nobody get the memo? Humans only live like 100 years tops. I want to see cool stuff. Can things move faster, please? 3 years seems like on the right track there. So that's a good question there from Douglas. Thank you for the generous support. And lastly, up here, Flawed Perspective says Mystery Box Nightbot Command Fund. There is a mystery box that we don't know what it's going to be used for that they're building at the production site. We'll have to do a Nightbot command for it. Good call. Okay, let's enter some more questions and wrap it up. How about?
Yeah.
Sunset Awesome is asking, what is the purpose of the SpaceX building Star Factory? Is it to replace the tents? Yes, that is another thing talked about in the Tim interview, is the Star Factory that they are building at the production site will slowly and steadily take over the rest of the tents. And you can see it there. You can see the sort of white boxy building off to the right. That will grow and subsume the tents. The tents will be no more, and the Star Factory will be the end-all, be-all. I do wonder what that's going to do for our sightlines in terms of being able to see stuff come and go. And like, I have shot booster, thrust puck or thrust section in one of the tents. I think that was booster 1. Oh my god.
I remember that one.
And so yeah, I don't know, like we might be losing those kinds of views. We'll have to see what happens. But that structure on the right will slowly and surely replace the tents, is as discussed in the Tim recent interview. The Tim review, if you will. Let's see. Here's one for smart people that aren't not me. Chris NG is asking, how does launching from Boca work inclination-wise? Doesn't it have to be threading the needle between Cuba?
Yeah, there is an FCC document, I think, somewhere that indicated what inclinations are sort of directly reachable from Boca Chica. There is, of course, always the consideration of doing dogleg maneuvers like Falcon 9 does occasionally to avoid overflying populated areas. It can reach a somewhat mid-inclination orbit, very similar to the inclinations you can reach from Cape Canaveral. And from there, that's going to be well served for reaching general low Earth orbits. It'll be good for setting up interplanetary transfers if that's a thing that does happen for Boca Chica. But yeah, the main trajectory you're going to be looking at is between the Bahamas and Cuba. Maybe they could thread that needle between Cuba and Mexico if they wanted a slightly higher inclination orbit that direction. But either way, you do have somewhat limited options. You could also, it's not that you can't overfly Cuba, for example. You can. Falcon 9 has done so on polar corridor missions. It's all about doing
polar corridor.
Yeah, I know. But it's all about the risk analysis of what is the risk of something landing on Cuba if something goes wrong, Obviously, spacecraft fly over land all the time when they're in orbit, so there's a point at which the risk of overflying something actually becomes negligible. And Cuba is a decent amount downrange from Boca Chica, so maybe once Starship has a kind of established flight rate and reliability record, it becomes possible that, the risk of taking a trajectory that does eventually overfly Cuba is almost zero and not even worth considering. It really comes down to doing a whole lot of risk analysis math that will come once the orbital test flight can happen and there's more data on how exactly the system will operate. If that documentation is still out there to talk about what inclination SpaceX has been told they can use or what inclination SpaceX intends to use, I don't have that information in front of me, but I believe that information might exist somewhere.
Yeah, it's on the programmatic environmental assessment, the famous one that we are looking at for a final review at the end of this month. We're probably going to see an update on that if they end up releasing it. So, but the draft one that they released in September actually included words, talking about they will initially launch, obviously, between Cuba and Florida and everything, but it also included options for dogleg maneuvers over Mexico. Basically,
Okay.
like you will head out to the ocean, and then Starship, just like Falcon 9, when it heads out for Power Corridor, sorry, Jack,
Ah,
when it heads out, it doesn't really shoot off in the direction of Cuba at first. It's just like a little bit southeast, and then the second stage does the rest of the work to head out to the correct orbit. Mostly because if they did that, they will be overflying over all Central Florida and South Florida. Obviously, you don't want that, especially early in flight, right? Because otherwise, like you have the almost fully loaded rocket, and you're just like if it fails, it drops on land. That's very fatal. Whereas if you're fast and high enough, the reentry sometimes takes care of that issue, because it breaks up and everything. So there was also that thing where they consider high inclination orbits from Boca Chica just by overflying Mexico, but limited like with a Starship only, and obviously a limited amount of time, just and like sparsely populated areas.
Yep.
Not really like, yeah, it's
maybe they just cut across
little bit
Florida,
like that.
across the Everglades, because hey, it's the Everglades. Who cares? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
The city of
We-
Miami would like a word.
Yeah, right. Well, we have a question here from Pat saying, why isn't SpaceX using chopsticks to lift the boosters on and off the launch mount? And we are seeing work on the chopsticks right now, which, maybe that's part of what they're doing with the chopsticks is getting them ready to lift boosters. I don't know actually what they're doing to the chopsticks right now, but that is a good question. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts there?
I think I concur. I think they're working on it and making sure, any final preparations in order to actually activate that capability. But I'm sure they're close. We've seen them lift a ship already, so shouldn't be that different. But yeah, the work on grounds on stage 0, like we said, is still ongoing, and that is all part of orbital launch readiness as well.
It is sort of curious that they haven't lifted a booster with the chopsticks yet. That's sort of one of the next milestones we have to look forward to for sure. But yeah, the work on the chopsticks continues. If that's that's going to be the that's going to be the label for this in the daily.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's do like one or two more questions before we wrap it. Wiki Gamer is asking, what would be worse, Starship exploding on launch, or the launch pad is smashed? I think the launch pad smashed would definitely be worse because
Yeah,
stage
because
0
they
takes
have
a whole
other
bunch of
vehicles
work.
coming. So yeah.
Yep. Let's see.
There's just the turnaround time to next flight would be shorter. Is why I would agree with that.
Yep. Pampalak is asking about Booster 7's transfer tube, not downcomer, transfer tube. And was saying, what was the issue in the first place, and was the repair successful? The issue was a test, or during testing, it sort of crumpled by the looks of a leaked photo, assuming that photo is real and accurate and etc. And the repair was to put a new one in, seemingly. And it seems like that repair was successful because they were able to do more cryo testing, and then they rolled the booster back, and we've seen a stream of Raptor deliveries to the production site. So it seems like Booster 7 is going to get Raptors, and if it gets Raptors, that means the proof testing was successful, which means the repair was successful. So that's sort of the logic puzzle that I'm building there. We touched on this one already. Stam Hunter is asking, do you think the recent Raptor explosions are a coincidence or a sign of a larger problem? I think it's just that's what happens when you test.
I think it is a symptom of, oh look, there's now a live camera showing the Raptor test, and all of a sudden people are aware of the explosions. It's not the explosions didn't start happening because we put the camera there. We were just seeing them now.
It's like Schrodinger's explosion.
Yeah. The Raptor is both rutted
like,
and not rutted until you observe it.
I feel like it's sort of been a known thing that Raptors blow up a lot on the test stand. But now like a wider audience knows because there's cameras on them, and it's not a big deal.
Go back to early Falcon 9 development. Merlin's did the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's see. What can I do for a last question that's kind of fun and exciting overall?
What are the 4 towers for? I'm so sorry.
Stop it! You should stop. You're a bad person, and you should feel bad.
The
And
one that
definitely
mods hate.
no. Let's not do that one.
Okay.
Definitely want to shout out to Tim and Everyday Astronaut, and
Oh yeah.
that video, that the first part of the Elon interview. I mean, it's awesome, and if you haven't watched it, go watch it, because everything that we talked about in today's episode is in more detail there. Here's one. This is a good one to close things out with. Alex is asking, when do you guys realistically, in all caps, realistically think that we will land humans on Mars? I'm going to go with my go-to, 2030. Mars 2030. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. When do you guys think? Alex?
Oh. I'm gonna say a decade, the 2030s.
Yeah,
So
I've actually.
I'm gonna go
2030s.
with a year.
Yeah, I've been giving this answer for a few years now, and I have said that in the 2030s will be the first crewed Mars landing, and I'm still sticking to that. So.
Were you thinking like mid 2030s, early 2030s? What do you
I'm thinking in the 2030s, and I refuse to disclose additional information.
Yeah.
And it will be on a Starship. I'll add
All
that.
right.
Yeah, I
right,
also
very
think
cool.
it's gonna be at least helped by Starship. Let's say.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer that it would be a Starship, or it would be, like you said, Alex, at least at the very, very least, be helped by a Starship. Like Starship takes a lander, the lander lands on Mars and comes back up and rendezvous with Starship and then goes on, or something like that. I can totally
There's
see.
definitely gonna be involvement of a Starship. I have no doubts about that.
This is the
Just
only thing on the
Yeah.
even slate right now that
Right.
would make it even remotely possible. So it's got to
Mhm.
be this or nothing else.
It'll be a Starship with no forward flaps. I'm kidding.
And a booster with a little nubby third grid fan. Oh man.
Oh gosh.
All right. Well, with that, I think we should probably wrap it up, huh?
I think so.
Cool. Well, thank you to everybody doing the super chats, everybody that's been watching, everybody that hit the like button, all of our subscribers. Thank you, everyone, for supporting the channel. We have a couple more super chats. John and Victoria. I don't know if you meant to do that twice, but you did two there. Thank you for the support, both times, regardless. And the Lucky Hulk. Thank you for the support. They say, if you look at the test facility in McGregor, there are a bunch of barns or little houses built in constant distance to each other. What are they for? This was part of a ordnance testing and production facility called the Blue Bonnet Ordnance Factory. It's one of 4 in the U.S. During, I think, World War II. And so those are ordnance bunkers. I do not believe they are still in use for anything, but that's what they are. You see those in a lot of different places. If you ever
at the
driving
Cape, too.
along the yep. There's some here in L.A. Down near. Oh, I'm blanking. Either way, yeah, they're ordnance bunkers. It's normal. Oh, and there's 3 at Mojave as well. For whatever purpose. So yeah, that's what those are. Good question from the Lucky Hulk. Go check out SpaceX or the SpaceX. Go check out our McGregor live stream if you haven't already. It's super awesome, and I like to just keep it on a monitor or something around, and every now and then when there's an engine test, I'll be like, oh my god, what's that roar? And it's like, oh right, Raptors.
Yeah.
So yeah, check out McGregor live if you haven't already. Okay, I think that does it for this week, huh?
I think we should thank our members, who
Yep.
are another way to support the channel. So thank you to all the members who send their support that way, especially the launch directors and flight engineers who just go above and beyond with their support. Really do appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, just on behalf of the entire team, we can't say it enough. Thank you to everyone who just sends the support to let us do what we do, because we really appreciate it.
Sure enough, the launch engineers and the launch directors and flight engineers, it's like the ultimate way to support what we do, and we cannot say thank you to them enough, because you're helping keep the lights on, helping pay the
I'm
data
just
bill,
gonna say
helping
something.
build the robot army. Go ahead, Alex.
I just see the slates, and the launch director list is like the tiny letter
The
font,
font,
you
yeah.
know.
I remember
It's
when
like,
we first started
oh, wow.
NSF Live, and this screen had like 5 names on it.
Yeah, it's amazing to see so much support. Like, oh, guys, it's amazing.
And it's fun because I see names that I know, like Corporal
Right, yeah.
Daywalker and Robert Hobson, and I mean, hey,
Photon
Photon
Empress,
yeah,
Jamie.
exactly.
Yeah, we know her.
So it's super cool. Thank you all for supporting what we do. It's so important, and you get cool perks when you do. So it's really really huge that you guys come out and support us in the ways that you do, because we literally could not do what we do without it. I think that's, it goes without saying. So thank you. All right, well, that's it for NSF Live this week. Do we want to go back around the horn and introduce each other again, or do you want to just say bye?
Well, my name is Thomas Burghardt. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to Jack for hosting and bringing about the questions.
Sure enough, no problem.
And thanks to Alex for bringing on with the Starship expertise, as always. I always feel like he's the expert in the room on these kind of streams, so appreciated him as always. Also, a shout out to Mr. Michael Baylor, working behind the scenes and showing us all the different camera views and putting together our presentation today, so we appreciate that as well. But yeah, until next time, stay tuned for future launch coverage. We've got Starliner OFT2 coming up this week. Hopefully some Starlink missions. We've got another episode of NSF Live a week from today, as always. So stay tuned for all of that. And thank you all so much for watching, but we'll see you guys next time.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
Chamber pressure looks good. Toggling up. Roger roll, Atlantis.
Water towers can fly! Yes!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight outside SCE off. Say again, SCE off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.